everyone! It's finally time to talk about the old storylines of Hello Neighbor. You know, those storylines that I keep telling you about in the other videos. We could even say that these storylines are my specialty because I have been researching them for very long time. I have also come to the conclusion that if you see famous YouTuber 1234 talking about this very topic after this video is out, well, yeah, they probably took it from me, most likely, since nobody is discussing the scrap storylines anymore, and it's very sad. The storyline I will talk about is happening during Hello Neighbor Pre-Alpha and Alpha 1 builds. It's referred to as the Faust storyline. It's not common knowledge, mainly because barely anybody was that crazy to read the Faust book to understand the storyline. Nikita kept saying you have to, and he was right. Actually, researching these storylines took me a lot of time, and everything I say in these videos is my research. I didn't just message the developers to tell me the scrap storylines like many people did throughout the years. And what I will say in this video is barely the surface of these storylines, like the very tip of the iceberg. The stories Nikita was and is making were simple on the surface, and they are very rich under the surface. There's much more in the game, but everybody's attention span has decreased so much. If this video was the originally planned 2 hours long, nobody would watch it. The story of Faust is quite complicated to begin with due to it being over 500 pages. It's painfully complicated. The story takes place like 200 years ago. In short, it's about the scientist guy named Henry Faust. He already learned everything a scientist could learn at the time. He was so bored he wanted to end his journey on Earth, but then Satan just casually appeared for him, offering a deal which went by that Faust will be served during his life by Satan, and in return, Satan can have Faust's soul after he died. Satan agreed to serve him during Faust's life, fulfill his wishes, and with the help of Mephisto, aka Satan, but not led by him, Faust was doing shady stuff like killing multiple people who were in his way, impregnating girls and gods as well, then leaving them behind. Faust is a person and he would deserve his soul to be taken. Mephisto is the only well-written character in the story. The book is enjoyable because of him only. So 500 pages later, the story ends with Faust dying. Due to the agreement, Mephisto comes to take his soul, but God, who Satan also made a bet with previously, by the way, saves Faust's soul. The dude killed people and did other horrible things, but sure. Now, I will only mention the story elements which are relevant to Hello Neighbor. It's that Satan wants your soul. Satan, aka the neighbor, wants to have the player's soul, and he will do everything to trap him. The very core of Faust is what we need, along with the other symbolical things throughout the book, which were the reason that you have to read the entire book, not just the Wikipedia page. So now let's see what's up with Hello Neighbor. Player moves into a new neighborhood. He unpacks his stuff and probably discovers the fact that his neighbor across the street has a giant house for no reason. In these early storylines, the house and the basement hold a really strong symbolical meaning, saying just so you know. Player was most likely the person who plays the game. We will not mention such name as Nicky Ross until the final release of Hello Neighbor, so cut that out. It's not Nicky, it's Player. Neighbor, also known as Satan, is aware of player's presence since he was moving in. We also know that at some point a light ball falls on the player, as shown in the trailer. We also know that the neighbor knows about such thing, and player knows that the neighbor knows. And knowing Nikita, who's making these stories, these events don't happen in the order we see them. So player either dies after he encounters the neighbor or before. We know the story of Faust, or at least I do know. I think the neighbor set up a trap to take the player's soul. Player didn't have to do anything shady to get his soul taken. He didn't even have to directly make an agreement to sell it to him. He only had to die. But then comes the question, why would the player break into the neighbor's house and open the basement door? Well, at some point, he probably starts suspecting that giant neighbors and the car crash are not the normal dream categories. The days also just repeat and repeat, being seemingly the very same. This all gets suspicious, and he decides to go to the only person who sees the neighbor. But the neighbor is pretty much minding his own business until he's directly interrupted in his own house, until somebody messes with his basement door. At some point, the player probably realizes that it is in fact the neighbor who is playing the game and not even him. But why would Satan protect the basement? Well, you can see an exit sign above it. Where would it lead? To hell? You wouldn't want to go to hell. Heaven? Maybe. According to the Alpha 1 basement, the basement itself would most likely lead to heaven, hence the neighbor blocks the way to it. He wants to prevent the player from getting there. Player desperately wants to go through the door, and Satan was a fallen angel who got kicked from heaven, so he's unable to access it anymore. Best he can do is prevent the soul he wants from escaping there. So while we assume the basement was probably leading to heaven, and knowing the writer, this is totally possible, we have to look at the characters. Oh, and one more thing before we continue. Alpha 2 basement, which everybody calls like that, yes, the big scrapped one, I think that belonged to this storyline. We only have neighbor and the player as characters, and how good it was. Sometimes a two-man show is worth much more than having 20 characters that we know nothing about. Player was a dude, a guy most likely, I think, in his 30s. So at some point this dude is dying and he begins or continues his journey towards heaven, which the other character is trying to stop. The neighbor, no, not Mr. Peterson, stop saying that, it's neighbor. The neighbor is the more interesting character, just like Mephisto in the Faust book. You legit just can't do anything against him yet. He is the one in power, he is the one in control, admittedly, and he's trying to prevent the player from probably proceeding to heaven. He wants to have his soul because a slave is always useful if you are a handsome, immortal demon. Neighbor, surprisingly, isn't doing anything non-human yet, unlike Mephisto in the book. I mean, all the neighbor is doing is setting up traps and cameras. He's legit the one playing with us and not us playing with him. This story was perfect for a learning AI. There's stuff like that 666 on his shoes, which is the number of the beast. There's apples everywhere, which in the Bible symbolize sins and sinning. There's also this 1414, which reads like this, or the fact that the Golden Calf song from Faust plays in the original trailer of Hello Neighbor. And there's, of course, that picture, which was back then the reason why I slipped a bit during my research. But now it's officially confirmed that the neighbor was the devil, so things are clear. Oh yeah, this picture is also from the Bible. It shows the betrayal of Jesus. I mean, Judas is rather like Faust. He's betraying God and his son, but whatever. I will make a separate video about the symbolical items of these alphas, because we have everything from a Shining reference to actual Bible references, and these symbols are the key to fully understand the storyline. Conclusion is, the neighbor wants your soul. That's the conclusion. And the fact that everything fantastic eventually gets scrapped and we can't have nice things. Faust as a book is part of the high culture, which means that it's not mainstream. And Hello Neighbor is also just a hit or miss. Just like Faust, you either like it or not, you either get it or not. In the next video, I will show yet another interesting scrapped storyline, which is actually my favorite storyline, so stay tuned. Subscribe and tickle that like button so I will know that you are here.